is absolutely everything I use to run my small art business from home. Hi, I'm Vicky and I'm a small business owner from South Wales, and today I'm going to be sharing everything I use to run my small art business. I've been running my art business for over 6 years and I always get asked what I use, so today I'm going to share that with you. These are the exact tools I use, including the design software I use to make my illustrations, the paper I use for my art print and stickers, and the equipment I use to make my art prints and stickers too. All of the things I mention are linked below on my Amazon storefront, which is an affiliate link, but these are things that I have used for years and years and years. These are things that I've bought with my own money, and they are always things that I reorder and use all the time for my small business. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about design tools. So the main design tool I use and that I've always used since the start of my business 6 years ago is my iPad and my Apple Pencil, and the app I like to use on my iPad is Procreate, and this is where I do all of my illustrations. I've had this iPad for many years. I actually had it before I started my business when I was just practicing digital art, so it's coming up to I think about 8 years old now, so you definitely don't need the newest equipment, and this is still what I use today. Then as a supporting tool and a supporting software to Procreate and my iPad, I actually like to use Canva. I use this for things such as my mock-ups for my art prints on my website. I also make mock-ups for my stickers on here. I like to use this for my marketing graphics and for making little graphics for my TikTok. What I find is really useful just to use to make my Etsy listings overall. Canva is really helpful for mock-ups and for quick visuals for marketing purposes. Let's go on to printing my art prints. The printer I've used is the Epson XP-970, and this is the printer I've been using for the last 4 years. Pros of this printer are that it prints in A3, which is really important because I do offer A3 prints on my shop. When using the right paper, you get the most luxurious and beautiful colors from this printer too, which I love. I would say the downside to this printer is the ink is really expensive, and I know there are other printers out there such as the EcoTank where the ink is cheaper, but this usually means that the actual printer itself is more expensive to buy. And please don't make the mistake I did at the start and be tempted to use non-genuine ink cartridges for your printer because they are a lot cheaper. I did this for a while and I came across a lot of issues with the printer, like I had to run a lot more printhead cleaning, I'd waste a lot more paper due to inconsistent printing results, and this just wasted so much more time and so much more resources too that it just wasn't worth it in the end. And eventually I did actually have to rebuy my printer because it did break, and I've got a sneaky suspicion it is because of the ink cartridges I was using before. I rebought the same model and I haven't had issues with this one since, and it's been a number of years and everything has been running pretty smoothly apart from the odd printhead cleaning you still have to do occasionally, but yeah, significantly less than I had to before. So now I only use the genuine elephant ink cartridges that go with my printer, and it has made a huge difference. They also hold up much better if the print is hanging in direct sunlight and things too, because it doesn't tend to fade, whereas the other ones eventually after a year or two I think they would fade. So just make sure you are charging enough on your website for your art prints to cover the cost of the ink, because the investment is so worth it. So if you are just starting out and you don't have the budget for a more expensive printer, this is a good one to start with, because then as you make sales you can use that money to buy the ink instead, rather than spending a lot of money up front on a really expensive printer if you don't know that your artwork is going to sell yet. But obviously if you do have the budget and you really do want to invest in your business, then yeah, I would say maybe go for a different printer if you are looking for cheaper ink prices, but the one I use is really solid and reliable, and I do recommend it. Paper I like to use with this printer to make my art prints is the Marrutt matte archival paper. I use this in A4 and in A3 for my art prints, and then I usually just print 2 on an A4 piece of paper and cut it in half for my A5 prints and so on, and that's also how I make my A6 prints too. I think this is the best paper I've found so far, obviously depending on what finish you want, but this is the one I like to use. And I do find that investing in a good quality paper is really important, because I found at the start of my business journey the prints weren't coming out the quality I would have liked, and I thought at first this was because of the printer, and it actually wasn't. It was because of the paper quality I was using. So bear that in mind. It is always worth it to invest in a better quality paper for your products. I also wanted to add that all the work I do now is digital for my business, but my sister actually does traditional art, and when she joined me for some of my markets last summer, she wanted to display and sell some of her artwork artwork too. So we actually made prints of her original drawings on this printer. We used the scanner that's built into the printer to scan her artwork onto my laptop. And I just edited those pictures then using Canva. It's probably not the most sophisticated tool to use to edit artwork, so do definitely look into that. But it worked perfectly fine for what we needed it for. I edited the colors on there a little bit just to make them more accurate to life. And we got some really good results from this printer too. So I think it is good for that if you are a traditional artist as well. So when it comes to making my stickers, I print all of my stickers on my printer. And I like to use these two papers. I use the one from Online Labels, which is a nice basic sturdy matte paper. But recently I've started using this matte white vinyl from Evergreen Goods, and it is more expensive than the Online Labels option. I do think it was worth the upgrade because the sticker quality is just a lot better. But the Online Labels one is a good place to start if you're looking for a cheaper alternative. And of course, like a lot of other people, I use my Cricut machine to kiss cut my sticker sheets. I've had this Cricut machine for almost 4 years now, and it's worked really well for me, and I think I do recommend them. Obviously you get your little hiccups every now and again, but overall for me it was worth the investment. For other bits of stationery such as my yearly calendars and my desk pad planners, I usually outsource these from different manufacturers, but at the moment I do still like to make my art prints and my stickers in-house. I have tried to outsource art prints before, but I found it was very pricey because you had to order in bulk, and I just didn't have much control over the quality, and I found the quality was always a little bit inconsistent. So I like to have that control by doing it all in-house myself, and it means I can print, cut, design and ship everything out from one space, which really works for me. Now for my packaging, I usually just order these no bend envelopes, and I'll order them in size A5 for my smaller prints and A4 for my A4 and 8x10 inch prints. And I also use these packing tubes as well for my A3 prints, which I prefer to roll up and put in tubes. I think this is down to preference, but I used to ship these flat, and even though mostly this would cause no issues, I definitely had a few arrive damaged. So that's when I made the switch to postal tubes, and I find this works so much better. So that is what I use, and I tend to just order all of these materials, so the envelope and the tubes, from either Amazon or eBay. It usually is Amazon, but I tend to shop around every time I need to do a restock just to see who the cheapest prices are, just to see if I can save a little bit. And I also get a lot of questions about these boxes that I use to ship things such as my calendars and bulkier print orders, and these are postal boxes, and I'm pretty sure they are called C5 postal boxes, and they do go as a large letter in the post if you are from the UK, which is really handy to know. And for my labels to put on the packaging, I use my Munbin thermal printer, but there are other thermal printers available, so do shop around. I just think the Munbin worked better for my needs, and this is something I wish I invested in much sooner. I've only had this Munbin printer for about 2 years. Previously to that, I used to print and cut all of my labels on my printer, and then I would stick them to the packages using either glue or tape, which if you're just starting out, I think that's fine. Like, you don't need to buy all the equipment all at once that you're ever gonna need. But now having this label printer, it just saves so much more time because I can just print and stick my labels within minutes, and before it used to take me a good 1 to 2 hours, especially during busier weeks where I'd have a lot of orders. I'd spend the chunk of my time just cutting and sticking labels. So yeah, not worth it. This is probably one of the best things that I've invested in for my business by far. And another pro for using a thermal printer is I actually then use this to make various types of stickers to go on the front of my packages and on the inside to seal the tissue paper together for the art prints. And I just think it looks really nice and really professional, and I usually put my logo on there somewhere so that when the parcel arrives to the customer's home, they know who it's from before they open the packaging. I think it's just a really good way to add branding to your packages, and obviously the thermal printer doesn't use any ink either, so other than restocking the labels every now and again, which I don't have to do too much because they come in bulk, I don't have to worry about ink with that. It is quite an affordable way of upgrading your packaging if you are interested in doing so. If you found this video helpful, do feel free to subscribe to my channel, give it a like if you want. I post weekly videos about my art business. I like to share the more practical, helpful sides to other people wanting to start a business. I also share a lot of behind the scenes too of me running my art business, and if that's something you'd be interested in, then I'd love to have you here. And I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.